Okay, and that Ed should pop up any second. There he is.
Thank you, Heather. All right, it is now 6:13, and I will recall the meeting to order. I will acknowledge again that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And as I said earlier, we have a late request for a presentation, and I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda with that included. Moved by Councillor Sanford, seconded by the Deputy Mayor once again. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Moving on, if somebody would like to approve the minutes of our May 4th meeting, moved by Councillor Halverson, seconded by Councillor Duggan. Any errors or omissions to note? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That takes us on to the addition of a public presentation from the President of the Board of Trade, Jamie Myra. We are pleased to have Jamie with us. And Jamie, it's 6:15 roughly, so I'll give you until 6:25, and then we can have 5 minutes of questions. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. And first, I just want to start by thanking you all for allowing me to present tonight. It was a little bit under the guidelines, so I thank you for making an exception and making a motion and hearing from me. My presentation won't be 10 minutes long. I've sent you basically all the documentation that I had for you to review in the past couple of days. I think I sent 7 documented letters from businesses within the town, quite frankly, mostly on Montague Street, but a few other businesses around the community. And to be honest, I didn't go out, and the Board of Trade didn't go out and try to solicit more support at this time, just because we felt we were in a time crunch and we knew we could get letters quickly from those individuals. So that's what we did. And basically the brunt of the whole presentation is that the Board of Trade and the business community at this time of Lunenburg just would request council to reconsider any increase to the commercial tax rate at all this upcoming or this tax season. I don't know if, I think many of you are aware, but just in case you aren't, as the letters all had stated, most of these businesses, most of our businesses are small businesses. Besides like drugstores and grocery stores, most of us have been closed. Well, it was 2.5 to 3 months until recently. We're going to be going on 3.5, probably the way the numbers are going, 4 months before this last lockdown is completed. So that's going to be approximately 1/3 of the past 14 months will be shut down. And during that time, we've had very little opportunity to make any kind of income. 4 of the 7 of us that have written letters also live in town. So that makes it very difficult, for any increases, residentially or commercially, but I'm not here to talk about residential taxes. I'm here to talk about commercial taxes. I just think that the 4 months that we've been closed, plus last year's 4 or 5 months of summer season that we were open, certainly weren't good months. In fact, they were terrible months for most. So you put 4 months of closure and 4 months of down to 50%, down to 40% for a lot. It just doesn't bode well to keep the doors open to a lot of businesses. This summer, unfortunately, as excited as we all were a month ago, maybe, when the Atlantic bubble was looking to open on April 19th, it looks that this summer is going to be not much different than last summer. So we're going to be in for another very long haul. And any increase at all at any level for a lot of our business community could be detrimental, to say the least. I think people find it hard to believe, but there's a lot of us that are probably 1 or 2 months of another lockdown away from just packing it in at this point. This time around, I will say, speaking to all the members that I talked to, the takeout business isn't going like it did last time. Like my type of online thing isn't going like it did last time, because people are tired, quite frankly. So last May, people were excited. In April, trying to keep restaurants going, but everybody's just tired of it. And I think people are don't have the funds. So we're all really struggling, and we just, I'm not going to sit here and go through this budget document you sent me. I have the May 4th update. I'm not going to say I disagree or agree with everything on here. I just think that this for this year, there are things on that list you might have to look at postponing to another year. There's things we all want to do, but when money's tight, you got to take things off that to-do list, and that's my request to have council please reconsider any increase of the commercial tax rate at this time, because I don't think most of us can sustain any kind of an increase. We are, whether we like to say it, hear it or not, we have grown into a tourism town, and we haven't had tourists in 14 months. On top of that, on top of the 7 letters that I was sent, Stelia is doing scheduled shifts, 3-day week schedules. So one group works 3 days and they're off. And the reason they're doing that is to, I think, what I've been told, hold off of doing any more layoffs. They're certainly struggling right now. So again, I would have no idea what their assessment is. I wouldn't even want to guess, but a 3-cent increase to the commercial tax rate on that facility would probably be devastating to them at this time. So I guess that's my presentation. I don't really have any big chart or anything to show you. It's just, no one likes to see taxes go up. I'll put it that way. But I was on council 12 years, and I certainly understand you got to get your money somewheres. So like I said in my email, if the feds or the provincial government was coming after you with bigger transfer payments or other things, I could certainly see you have no place else to turn but us, the taxpayers. But this time around, they didn't do that. So some things on your list, as much as you'd like to do them right away, personally, I think the business community would love to see you postpone them a bit. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Jamie. We're at 6:19. Jamie started at 6:15, so we'll allow 11 minutes for questions. Anybody have any questions of Jamie at this point? Deputy Mayor?
Thanks, Your Worship. Well, Jamie, I appreciate your presentation, and I do support your request fundamentally. I certainly do fundamentally, and in all likelihood, later on in the meeting, I'll vote to support your request. But like sometimes when you see some of these letters come in, it's a little bit disconcerting, from being on council. I've been on council since 2012, and I just went back, a couple little fun facts here that I think council has been pretty sensitive to the business community. In 2016-17, the commercial tax contribution was 35.1% of the overall tax we collected. And what we're proposing this year before your request is 31.9%. So, this coming year, it's 3% less of the total tax, contribution from the commercial sector than what we were collecting back, quite a few years ago. So that was a strategy that we tried to, bring the two rates closer together to help, attract and support businesses that were here. In 2019-2020, the commercial tax rate was $3.35.8. And what we're proposing this year before your request is $3.34.8. So that's actually a cent less than what we were paying 2 or 3 years ago. So I know, we're in extremely difficult times, and and I understand where your request is coming from, but people still expect roads to be paved and snow to be plowed and sidewalks to be looked after and things like that too. So it puts quite a burden. It's going to put a burden on the whole community at some point in time. And that's, I guess, would you rather, again, like a couple of mosquito bites, or at some point in time, it's going to probably eventually be a bee sting.
I guess if I can respond, because it really wasn't a question, but I guess my theory is if it was roads I was asking you to cut, or a fire truck or a plow, I probably might even reconsider coming before council at this time. But, when I looked over the budget, there's some things on there in our opinion and the business community's opinion that you could probably postpone for a year or two that aren't necessarily, big urgent things that are going to hurt us capital wise. And again, I don't want to get into it too much, but some of the proposals you have in your budget is like a staffing restructuring consultants report, which I totally get, but then you also have in there to hire 2 or 3 more people this year. Now, to me, I would think that's putting the cart before the horse. You do the consultants report first, then hire the people. So there's one way to reduce the taxes, just one quick way. I'm certainly not asking you to cut your services to snow removal or anything like that. But and I understand, like I said, it's tough. I was there 12 years. It's never easy this time. I hate it this time of year, quite frankly. So
Thank you, Jamie. I have Councillor Halverson.
Yeah, thanks again. Again, Jamie, thanks for the presentation, and to echo what the deputy mayor said, we're all sensitive to what the business community is going through. And I do want to make a point, though. You mentioned going through the budget and identifying items that that you could do without. I get a little frustrated personally when I look at a budget and someone says, well, you're charging me an extra $35,000. Well, you can take that from this one thing, be it whatever it is, snowplow, consultant's report, railings at the academy, whatever it is. Everyone's going to have their preference. We can't look at it that way. We can't say that your $35,000 tax rate is going to be directly applied towards something, because it's not. It's all going into the one pot, and it's all the general services that it takes to run this town. So it's just, I'm not trying to argue with you. I feel the point needs to be made that it's we're not taxing businesses to facilitate a consultant's report. We're taxing businesses to run a town, right? And the consultant's report is just one piece of a mandate that we've been asked when we were voted in to pursue Project Lunenburg and get these goals underway. And when I look at when I look at the tax rates, and the only way we can get revenue and get this money is to adjust our tax rates. If we don't make those changes now, we are going to be putting ourselves behind 2-3 years ago. Like I would almost ask, we are, like you mentioned, we're going to get out of this at some point. Something's going to change. There will be tourists, there will be more business here, and we can either be ready for it when it happens by positioning ourselves with these moves, or we can be playing catch up for 6 to 9 months and prolong our agony. And I'm going to say all that, but all that to say is, as the deputy mayor said, I'm actually sensitive to what you're going through, and I think likely at the end of this, I'm going to vote to give you the reduction that you're talking about here, go with the reduction you're talking about here. But I just feel it's important to make those points that this is a budget as a whole, and that we're also positioning ourselves for the recovery. And we want to make sure that this suffering doesn't go on any longer than it absolutely has to.
Thank you, Councillor Halverson. I have Councillor Sanford, and then I'd like to ask a question, and we have 4 minutes left, give or take.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Jamie and the Board of Trade for coming to the table. And if I understand correctly, Jamie, am I hearing you say that if we don't look at how we are assessing the taxes in the context of our businesses might not be here as we go forward? Again, the pandemic has created unprecedented challenges for our small business and our tourism town as it is. Is that what I'm understanding you to say?
Yeah, there's businesses basically hanging on, to my knowledge, and they're not going to tell you too much, by a string right now. And the other part that I left out of my presentation, that most of the businesses on Montague Street that we heard from, most of the buildings down there, their assessments have increased dramatically just in that area alone over the last 2 years. So nothing that the town council did, don't get me wrong, but just with the massive influx of tax assessments, their taxes went up dramatically, say 2 years ago or last year as it was. And now this year, the pandemic comes along, and I'm not saying their buildings are overassessed. But what I'm saying is, if a building was assessed, say, at 250 or 300 3 years ago, now it's assessed at 600,000 on the commercial rate, that's a huge, big chunk extra they're paying. And they probably paid it and went away silently. They probably didn't, complain too much, because we had some very, very good summers 2 or 3 summers ago. But right now, with that huge increase in assessment, along with any kind of a tax increase, it could be very, very detrimental to some of them businesses down there. And I use Montague Street because that seems to be the most valuable, property there is in town, is along there overlooking the harbor, obviously. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Jamie, my question is, so effectively what you're asking for is an extension of the 4%, not 4%, sorry, 4 cent tax decrease that council granted last year for this year, at the very least. And I'm just wondering, do you have a sense of when the recovery would, and I'm not unfavorably disposed to that aspect of the request. My question is, what do you think would be a reasonable timeline when things do recover for us to recoup that original tax decrease if we were to choose to do that?
Well, first of all, I'm just going to give a guess here, because if I can give you that answer, I'm going to pick lotto numbers tonight too. But I think we're all hoping, crossing everything we have, that next summer looks much differently than this summer is going to. And I really think that if everybody, or not everybody, but if 80% or 90% of the population is vaccinated by the fall or by midsummer even, you're going to see things open up, and it's going to be sort of like I think by fall, the Canadian government and the provincial government is going to have at it approach. You're vaccinated, you do what you want to do. If you're not, I mean, we'll still be wearing masks for that. So I think next summer, if people are allowed to travel around Canada and even more so throughout the world, Lunenburg might see a summer like we've never seen in years. And if that's the case, I think that if this wouldn't have happened the way it's done, and I think if the Atlantic bubble would have opened on April 19th and things would have kept moving the way it was, you might not even had a pushback this year, quite honestly. But I think that from the time you guys started your budget process to now, things have turned sideways big time in Nova Scotia, and everybody's panicking now. And I understand where you were at. I was excited. I mean, I was on CBC, interviewed about being excited about the Atlantic bubble opening on April 19th. I mean, now I look like an idiot, right? So, I mean, it's completely, we didn't see this coming. So I think if things go well, you could probably end up putting that 4 cents back on at least, or more, another year without a lot of pushback if people get through this. But you got to give them an opportunity to get through this, I think, because this time around, the feds also aren't coming to the table with any kind of bailouts like they did the last time. Like, that's the other thing that helped everybody last time.
Okay. That takes us to 6:30, which is the end of the question period. Unless anyone has anything absolutely pressing, we'll thank Mr. Myra and excuse him while we go into deliberations on the budget.
Thank you very much, folks, again, for taking time from your evening, and have a great discussion on budget. I used to love those meetings. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, that takes us past public presentations and to our one item of business tonight, which is looking to address and hopefully finalize the operating budget. We have Ms. Dagley, and before we begin discussion, I'm just wondering if Ms. Dagley can frame some of the aspects of the direction she was given from the last meeting, and then we'll commence discussion.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, at our last committee of the whole meeting, staff were asked to develop a budget option that would have a potential 3-cent tax rate increase for both residential and commercial taxpayers. So council will find either the schedule 6A in your agenda package or on page 24 of your full agenda package, a continuation of our options page. That at the bottom third, Heather, if you just want to move down to the bottom third, it will have the updates for this May 18th meeting. Thank you, Heather. So right there. So there's really essentially 3 items. The discussion at our last meeting was that there wasn't enough funding for the economic development officer. So in this option, there is now putting $58,000 in there for a contracted position starting July 1st with $5,000 of supports. There was at the last meeting the request from the Lunenburg Academy Foundation for funding. So there's the $30,000. And then there would be the rate increase that had been discussed at the meeting. And to balance that, there would be an operating reserve transfer of $26,000. That would balance us to the unfunded operating expenditures from our first draft budget that we had back in March. And then I will turn it back over to you, Your Worship, unless there's questions for me.
Thank you. Just, are there any questions for Ms. Dagley at this stage? We'll note that that was the direction she was given. So It's really up to us to decide where it goes from here. Deputy Mayor.
Well, no questions for Lisa, but I was just thinking if, before we delve into, there's so many layers to this that, if we can deal with the Board of Trade's request maybe first, because that seems like we might, definitively change what we do, obviously down the road here, right?
You've read my mind insofar as I think the first thing with council's indulgence we should address is a discussion on whether we wish to continue with our previous direction on the residential and commercial tax rates. And I think the commercial tax rate is a good place to begin, looking to council to see that they're okay with that approach. Okay. In that case, we can do a go around. We'll start with Councillor. We'll start with the Deputy Mayor. I'm just going based on who's on my screen here. We'll start with the Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Sanford, Councillor Ernst, Councillor Halverson, Councillor Duggan, and Councillor Birtles.
Well, with regards to the Board of Trade request, Your Worship,
just the commercial tax rate and the Board of Trade request
Yeah,
at this stage, and we'll do residential after that.
Well, I am supportive of their request. It is extenuating circumstances that we're in. I once worked with a guy in the marketing department, and he said, and he says that what companies do wrong most of the time is that when times get rough, they cut back on marketing, which is the time you should really invest in marketing. But when there's no money to draw from, well, what can you do? So that's usually one of the first things that goes. So I do support their request. So, I won't be lingering any longer. Let's see what everyone else has to say.
Okay, Councillor Sanford.
I would agree. I support the request.
Thank you, Councillor Ernst.
When we discussed this 2 weeks ago, I was very much conflicted with everything, mostly as Mr. Meyer has put out that it is on it's a pandemic year, and that's obviously puts the major crunch on people. So yes, I think he spoke extremely well, and I'm glad to hearing from what he put forward to the community, and then some word on the street conversations I've had with people. So I certainly am in support, with of course remembering that we will have to find another means to or find another way to deal with this, but I am in support.
Okay, Councillor Halverson.
Yeah, I have to agree with what everyone else is saying too. I appreciate Jamie Meyer's presentation. I appreciate his points. Appreciate the folks writing in to express their concerns and letting us know what they're going through. And we want to get everyone through this. So yeah, I mean, these are extenuating circumstances, and I'm in favor of leaving 3% off this year. 3 cents.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Duggan.
Yep, I as well support the request, and completely appreciate the position that our local businesses are in at this point. So I do support it.
Okay, Councillor Birtles.
I do support it as well. I appreciate Jamie taking the time to reaching out to the local businesses and having them bring forth their concerns. It's nice to hear outside of the box, and it is a pandemic and we have to work together. So I do support him.
All right. And I was already favorably disposed of it, so that's, we can call that unanimous. And then, so we will honor that request in our budget direction. And now I think the best thing to do is to move on to the residential rate and see if anybody has had a change of heart there. And I'll start in the same order, the Deputy Mayor.
I still support the 3 cents for the residential.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sanford.
I don't support the 3 cent for the residential, and I would like to speak for a minute, please. I hear Deputy Mayor Mosier talking about extenuating circumstances. Councillor Halverson is saying we want to get everyone through this. Jenny is saying that we're in a pandemic and we have to work together. And as Jamie indicated, 4 of the 7 people that did present live in town. And if we're looking at commercial taxes bearing burden for them, I would really like us to give a long, hard thought to what that 3-cent increase on residential taxes, recognizing that we have fewer houses with higher property values, so the burden is borne on fewer people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Councillor Ernst.
This is where it gets tricky because we very well will see a pushback if we eliminate the commercial increase yet keep the residential. So and I do have to say I agree with Councillor Sanford's points. I think we need to work together, and I know I'm being hypocritical of myself because I said that we still need to come up with the money, but I'm conflicted here, and I think I agree with Councillor Sanford.
Councillor Halverson.
Well, we do want to get everyone through this, but we also want to run a town, and it's got to come from somewhere. I don't want to pay more tax either. If my math is correct here, I mean, we're talking about it's $30 on 100,000 assessment, right? At least you jump in a moment if I'm wrong, but I mean that's a $400,000 home. That's $120 a year, and I know that's not an insignificant amount of money, but I don't know. We got to get it from somewhere. I'm sorry. I have to. We have to stand up on one of these, and if we're going to not move on the commercial rate, we do have to. We've got a budget that we have to meet, and it's got to come from somewhere. So I hate to do it, but we have to do something on the rate. It has to come from somewhere, and whether that's 3 cents or I don't know what that amount looks like. Now that we've done these changes, maybe we'll have a chat with Lisa about this afterwards. But I'm inclined to move at least some kind of tax rate on residential.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan.
I still stand firm that I don't believe it's the year for a tax increase. That being said, I hear both sides of this and would potentially agree to a smaller increase, but that's a larger discussion that we would have to have. At this point, a 3-cent increase is not something that I would support at all.
Thank you, Councillor Bertels.
Thank you. I hear both sides of it, and I understand it isn't really the time for it, but as Mayor Mosier said, it's not about the bumblebee bites, it's about the mosquito bites. I think that's where we have to start. So I'm still in favor of the increase.
And I'm still in favor of a 3-cent increase as well, but at a 4 to 3, I think it's worth discussing. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I didn't weigh in with all my reasonings behind my support for this, but I agree we have to get through this, but we also have to survive ourselves. And a couple of things that we have to bear in mind, that what we put off today, we're going to have to pay for tomorrow. And we usually pay more for it tomorrow than we pay for it today. So just with, we've had 2 years of very limited capital borrowing. And with the limited capital borrowing we're doing this year, next year, that's going to equate to a 1.3 cent increase in our tax rate. It has to be covered. We have no choice. We've taken 90K from our snow plowing reserve savings to cover some of our operating expenses this year. So I hope we have we got to hope for another mild winter, because if we keep not replenishing that reserve fund, that will cause us some very severe headaches down the road. We're going to have wage increases. We have a contract due with our employees. I mean, that's that's a very good likelihood that that could be a cent or more on our tax rate for anything. And then there's the usual inflationary pressures that we get from policing, fire protection, regional housing, and the district school board, which this year was $72,000. There's no reason why it's not going to go up to that extent next year. So, if we don't do these things, if we don't do something to try to get ahead of the curve this year, we're going to end up we're going to end up really paying through the nose for this eventually. Now, another example, I mean, it's easy to say, well, we can put this off, we can put this off. Another good example of things that get put off that never get done. So back in my first term, we did a real nice active transportation study. And we did, not unlike the comprehensive community plan, we did 3 very extensive public consultations with that. And one of the things that was identified from a high need and safety perspective was a sidewalk in Tannery Road. So the first council, said, okay, that's going to be our legacy piece. We will do the sidewalk in Tannery Road. I think we all know there's no sidewalk in Tannery Road yet, going, along the tan yard there. And the reason for that is because every year it was deferred for budgetary pressures, fiscal restraints to hold the tax rate. So, if we want to get on with our, CPP initiatives, we need to start fulfilling these needs. The public's asked for it. I think they are, and 100% of our tax dollars go back into our community. It's not like we're not blowing this off somewhere, in another place. Whatever money we collect, they get back in services and recreation and all the things that they come to enjoy our community with. So we started out this year, when we got to remember too, when we started out this year, when we plugged in all the things that we needed to do for our CPP plan, it was a 16-cent increase in our tax rate. So with some compromises, some cost savings, a little robbing Peter to pay Paul, I think we got to a good place with 3 cents. And I really want to, I don't want to have to turn around here in a year or two's time and have either nothing done or have a tax increase and really not give anybody anything for it. At least this way we can give them some back.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sanford.
I would just like to follow up with Deputy Mayor Mosier's comments about paying more tomorrow. And I want us to think about tomorrow, and I want us to think about right now, even aside from the pandemic. And I want you to think about property taxes and the property valuations. And all of us have watched, to some extent, the real estate market, and we've seen the prices double in some cases for real estate. And next year, we are going to start realizing more tax revenues from property taxes without any changes whatsoever, because the values of the property have increased so I don't necessarily buy into all the doom and gloom and this is going to set us so far behind. I feel a delay absolutely is putting us in a position to be able to support the community given the unprecedented times of the pandemic and what they're facing. And I feel that we're going to be able to go forward next year with gusto, and we will have more revenues coming in from a variety of sources, and some of which will be through the efforts of councillors and the work that we're going to be doing. So I think that there are opportunities for us to be able to move forward without a tax increase on the residential properties. And I don't see that it's going to set us up, far behind. I would like Ms. Dagley, and first of all, I do want to acknowledge the great work that she's done all the way through our conversations. But I would be curious to see financially just how far behind we would be if we delayed a tax increase to next year. Thank you.
Thank you. With your indulgence, Councillor, it's because you're next on the speakers list. I'll offer Ms. Dagley an opportunity to respond to Councillor Sanford's question.
Of course.
Yes, I guess, Your Worship, through you. That is a difficult question about, being behind. There's lots of factors that weigh into things, such as you've mentioned, the property assessments and whether they come out of cap and what those assessments are when those properties are sold, and also the pressures that we are under from the province for education rates and cost increases. We had a notification about a contract negotiations for the RCMP, and that could lead to additional costs for next year. So it really truly is a difficult question to answer. of what we would look like if we don't proceed with a tax rate increase this year. But certainly there is no end to financial pressures that the town is under year over year, I guess.
Thank you, Ms. Dagley. Does that answer your question, Councillor Sanford?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Dagley.
Thank you. Councillor Ernst.
Thank you. And also, Lisa, don't go very far because I'll probably be calling on you again. My question, I guess, would be, I'm very much, like I say, I'm seeing both sides of this very clearly. I'm in favor of both sides, and it's becoming very difficult for me to. So usually in a case of this, I'm thinking, if we were to meet in the middle, would there be I'll direct staff or ask staff to speak on this, if it's possible, to maybe have a partial tax increase, maybe not the full 3 cents, but can we work around with something a little less, perhaps, that might be satisfactory to everyone?
Do you want me to weigh in, Your Worship? Okay. Well, certainly you're able to do that if you wish, but you're going to have to forego something. You have to decide if there's some items that are included in the budget that you're going to delay, or if you're going to make some cut in a service. There will be some need to balance somewhere. So you'll just have to decide what you can live without if you're going to make those changes.
Thank you, Ms. Dagley. Any other councillors have any perspectives on this that they'd like to share, or questions they'd like to ask of Ms. Dagley? Councillor Halverson.
Well, to Ms. Dagley's point, oops, where am I at there? To Ms. Dagley's point, I mean, this has been now weeks of whittling and finagling, and I, like the deputy mayor said, I feel like we've arrived at a good place with this particular budget. And I guess I would ask, if we're going to move on a tax rate, what do you want to pull out? What are we not going to do this year? Because at this point, we're funded to do what's in here. And if we pull a string, something's got to go, right? If we move a tax rate, something has to go. So we need to identify what that is. I can't, and I personally, I can't, it's funny because I just said, a budget as a whole, but at this point, we actually are down at that level where we have to pull a string, pull something in order to get that tax rate. So we have to look at, what do we want to get rid of? So I'd look at councillors, if you wanted to move less than 3, what do you want to give up?
Thank you, Councillor Halverson. And I'd also just note, and I think this is what Ms. Dagley is about to note, which is that honoring the request of the Board of Trade actually puts us $15,000 behind already. So we already have $15,000 to address. So a tax increase, and I'm not saying this to make a point, I'm just saying a tax decrease would be more on top of that. So we're not quite at balance as of right yet with the granting of the Board of Trade request.
That's what I was going to mention, Your Worship, and I was just going to say that a 1 cent residential is around $25,000. So you have the $15,000 that you're looking for to honor the Board of Trade request, and then any half cent or cent that you wanted to take off of the residential rate. Each one of those is another $25,000 that you're looking to find in the budget.
Any further questions or comments? Ms. Dagley, I have one. I'm just wondering if you can speak to some of the initiatives that people have been suggested to be deferred or delayed are essentially funded out of the one time, $90K carryover kind of money. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to, if we were to not proceed with some of those initiatives, what would you suggest we do with that money? Like, I don't particularly think that it's a good idea to have one-time money dedicated to an ongoing tax rate. So I'm just wondering, we could defer a few things, but a lot of the increases are related to ongoing operational costs. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to that.
Certainly, and I think the deputy mayor alluded to these earlier. When we started budget deliberations, there was discussion about our mandatory cost increase So we had $72,000 worth of mandatory cost increase, and then another almost $30,000 worth of debt financing that came on this year, which is just about $100,000, just over $100,000, or roughly 3 cents on the tax rate. In our budget balancing, there's 3 studies that are included in the budget. Under general government, the organizational review, the performance indicators, and the policy and bylaw review, which with the adjustments we've made to the budget total $130,000. The one-time snow savings from fiscal 2021 that we are carrying over is $90,000. And it was thought that that was roughly offsetting those. If we were going to delay any of those items, it would not be financially wise to use those one-time savings to offset an operational item. No. So those funds could go back into a reserve for capital, or it could reduce our borrowings for this fiscal year that we're just wrapping up. When you're looking at things that you're thinking about deferring, it may be that you're just looking for a later hire, perhaps, or something like that. That may be that those are operational items, but you just maybe have to push them out a little bit further. Does that answer your question, Your Worship? That you were
Sort of, and correct me if I'm wrong, the uniform assessment increase in our revenue was about 50K.
Yes. You spoke uniform assessment, but you mean the assessment increase?
Yes, yes, the assessment increase
Resulted in roughly $50,000 of additional revenue. Yes.
of additional revenue.
Yes.
So is it a conceivable option to defer those performance indicators to next year and then to reduce the tax rate to say 2 cents?
That could certainly be an option, Your Worship. Yes.
And that's without touching any of the carryover money that's one time that we would need.
It would have a minor insignificance to that. I think that could be done. Yes.
So I'm wondering if there are any other comments or questions, deliberations at this stage. Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Halverson.
Well, whatever we do, we got to do it tonight, because, you know, June is rushing to us quickly. We're soon halfway through a year. We're soon through a quarter of our fiscal period, and we have to make a decision. And as I usually tell my children, don't come with me with a problem unless you have a solution attached to it. So, you know, we got to find a solution tonight before we go. So whatever we do with the tax rate, we have to have a solution for the revenue. We have to find a solution for the 15,000 we've already given up. And if we go any further, we're going to have to find some solutions for that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Halverson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Dagley, I guess if we're looking at, you had suggested to put off the performance indicators this year. That would be, there's 50K there. I believe correct me if I'm wrong, the Board of Trade request is about $35,000. Is that what it equates to, or a little more than that?
15.
15, sorry. So that leaves 35, and that would fund. You said there was the other.
That would roughly, if we were finding the Board of Trade somewhere else, the 35 would be like $1.50 cents essentially.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, that provides us that like a buffer. Like, again, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned, you know, anything goes sideways, we've got no capacity to deal with it. So that $1.50 cents would be that capacity. And if I'm getting the numbers correct here, you mentioned a number of what you call them, their basic services, and the cost of boring amounted to almost $100,000 increase. That's just cost of living, basically increase this year to run the town. And then the assessment increase, as Councillor Sanford indicated, was about $50K this year. Is that right?
the revenue that was generated from the assessment increase was
Right.
$53,000, yes.
Right. So at this point, the cost of basic service is outpacing the assessment increases. And that's not to say we're not going to increase as we go forward, but that's the reality for this year. We're still 50K in the hole, even with the assessment increases.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Your worship, it's me speaking. I just wanted to weigh in for a second. There are other options as well, too. I know this isn't something we've had a chance to talk about, but I think an indicator's assessment is a very important piece of work to do and would be very beneficial for a subsequent organizational review. I think it would provide some baseline data and also indicate the improvements that have been made through implementation of the CCP. So I'd almost suggest the reverse to council, but I think it's something that's worthy of further staff input and consideration, as it's not a discussion or matter that we've evaluated as staff. It's just an example that Ms. Dagley is putting forward, with all due respect, and I think it's worthy of further consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Renton. I'll note that I'm still in favor of the 3 cents. Personally, I was just noting that there were options if councillors weren't in favor of that. I think the most helpful thing to do at this stage is to go back around. By my read of the landscape, we had a 4-3 majority in favor of 3 cents. So once again, I will just go around and test for consensus. Deputy Mayor.
3.
Councillor Sanford.
0.
Councillor Halverson.
3.
Councillor Duggan.
I'm still torn. I feel like I would settle for 2.
Councillor Ernst.
I'm leaning towards 3.
Councillor Bertels.
Still at 3.
That's 5 in favor of a 3 cent tax increase. Are we comfortable with that direction? In the majority? Finalizing it? I'm comfortable with it. I'm seeing just Councillor Ernst, if you could, and Halverson, if you could just confirm that for me.
Yeah.
Then we will take that as the direction so given. And we're back to where we started, but that was still a good discussion to reconfirm. So having said that, the last aspect of this that we have to deal with is deciding where that 3 cent increase goes. There are, of course, any number of places it could. I am looking to Ms. Dagley to weigh in. I mean, one of the things we haven't dealt with is the academy request for 30,000, and we still have 15K to take out based on the no increase to the commercial tax rate. So at this stage, we can consider, I think, the tax rate direction given, and we will look to councillors to decide how to put that money to use.
Did you, your worship? So I guess, yes, that's, if the direction from council is a 3 cent residential increase and a 0 commercial tax increase, from the summary that was provided to council this evening, you need to decide where the $15,000 change is going to happen and what of those items that are there that you want to move forward with.
Okay. Does anybody want to weigh in on how we make up that 15,000? Councilor Bertels.
I just have a question in regards to the academy. Do we have to do the whole 30,000 or can we defer a portion of it to the next year? Or, I mean, just a question on that.
Yeah, so the request has come in for the academy at 30,000 rather. In past years, we've either given 30,000 or Ms. Dagley can correct me, last year we gave 15. So that is one place you could get some of it or a portion of it, is by reducing the amount in that request.
How receptive were they last year when we reduced it?
Well, I don't think anybody likes to get less than they asked for, but I think everybody usually recognizes that, you know, the difficulty in government is to have unlimited desires and limited resources.
So my suggestion would be to reduce the academy to 15.
Okay. Can I just see other councillors weighing in? Councillor Halverson.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Bertels. I think, you know, I want to make sure the academy gets something. I think they provide tremendous value to our town. But I think, again, it's just as we talked about, we're belt tightening this year, and I think we have to belt tighten everywhere. You know, we've done our work as council to get our budget as lean as we can be, and I think, you know, still providing something to allow the operators is at $15,000. I think is reasonable, and that helps the Board of Trade as well. So, yeah, I think that's a good place to go.
Anybody else like to weigh in? Deputy Mayor?
I was really hoping we could, you know, we could work towards, you know, the foundation becoming independent with this grant, but I do support Councilor Bertels' suggestion. So,
Councillor Duggan?
I agree with Deputy Mayor Mosher. I do want to see the foundation become more independent in time. And I do agree with the 15,000 for this year.
Councillor Ernst?
We have to make it work, and certainly something is still good. And I'm in favor of that.
Councillor Sanford?
I am absolutely in favor of working in partnership with the Academy, and if we can allocate some funds for them this year, given that there is a pending tax increase, then I would be supportive of half of the amount requested.
Okay, that sounds like a strong consensus to me. And if everybody is comfortable with the other amounts as staff have allocated them, I mean, recognizing, of course, that some aren't comfortable with the tax rate, but that's been decided. Can I just get a show of hands or nodding of heads that everybody's comfortable with how else that has been allocated? Ms. Dagley, is that clear enough direction for a recommendation for the operating budget to council?
I would like some motions if I could, Your Worship, but
The motions were coming,
okay.
but I'm just
But
wondering.
yes, direction
that's-
on a staff level, yes, that's fine.
Yes, okay. And is everybody on council clear as to what that entails in terms of the allocation of costs in the operating budget? Okay,
Your Worship, for the purposes of minutes, I'd appreciate a recap if I could, please.
so the direction from the meeting and the recommendation to council would be for a 3-cent residential tax increase, a 0-cent commercial tax increase, the Academy Foundation getting half the amount, and the other amounts being allocated as distributed by staff in the original report. Is that
Thank
clear
you, Your
enough?
Worship. Yep, that's as I had it. Thank you for recapping.
Thank you. All right, so I will entertain a motion to recommend that operating budget to council. Moved by Councillor Halverson, seconded by Councillor Bertels. Is there any further discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. All right. There is no new business pending. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, June the 1st. And there being no further business, I will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.